Hey, welcome to Trial by Father. I'm Isaac, and as a brand new dad, I've got more questions than I have answers for. So, I'm sitting across the table from other parents who are further along the journey than I am, hoping to learn from their wisdom. I want to explore what it looks like to raise children in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And my hope is that it'll spark meaningful conversations around your own table so that we can all learn what it looks like to be the parents God has called us to be. On this episode, I got to sit down with Shari Howiler and talk all about the newborn phase. Shari and her husband David have been members of Mill City for a long time now, and they now have 4 children, ranging from the ages of 10 all the way down to 1 year old. It was super encouraging to have this conversation as a new dad in the middle of this infancy stage. And I hope that this conversation is as encouraging to you as it was to me, as I get to hear from Shari on the difficulties and challenges, as well as the joys of being a parent of a newborn baby. Let's dive in. Well, welcome, Shari, to Trial by Father. Exciting to be able to have you come and sit in this room and talk about babies, because I know that you have had a lot of them. So why don't you just start off by introducing yourself and a little bit about your family?
Yeah, so my husband David and I have been married for 15 years this summer. We actually started dating in high school, so we're high school sweethearts.
Wow.
We got married very young after my freshman year of college.
Wow.
So that was a fun experience. And we now have 4 kids. So we've got boy, girl, girl, boy, almost 10, and then 7, 5, and 1. So our house is very busy.
Uh-huh. That sounds like a nice spread.
Yes, yes. And we really like to be active as a family, so we spend lots of time outside. Our kids have a lot of energy, so we try to get them to burn it all off outside if possible. Let's see, we've got 2 guinea pigs.
Yeah, that
So-
sounds accurate for little children.
Yes, they're great little pets. We've had some dogs. We had 2 older dogs pass away actually in the last year, but our next family adventure is to get a puppy in just a couple weeks.
Wow, it's just a couple weeks of puppy life. I remember
Yes.
when my wife and I got a puppy. It was not the life for me, but
It's very similar to having a baby, I think.
there's a lot of feeding and pooping and
Yep.
Yep. So maybe talk a little bit about what motivated y'all to have children, to start a family in that way. You say you got married young. You were obviously interested in that direction of life. So maybe just talk some about y'all's motivation to have kids.
Yeah, sure. I guess I can't ever think not having kids. We both just always wanted to have kids.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I had a great mom, and so I just knew from a young age, like I always wanted to be a mom, and I was excited about that. And then as we got older, like we just had the goal of, hey, we should have a lot of kids and raise little mini Christians. Like what could be a better use of our time?
Yeah, absolutely. That's super cool. Yeah, I know that my wife and I, when we were having the conversations about kids, it was from a place of feeling like we always had the desire in some kind of way. We just, when we both envisioned the future, it was as husband and wife with kids in some kind of capacity.
Exactly.
And so I can definitely resonate with that. It's not necessarily heavily overthought in terms of the motivation side. And obviously there's maybe some preparation, though. Maybe talk some about as y'all had conversations about we want to have kids, this is the time. What were some of the things, what were some of the factors that y'all were considering? Were you considering? Was it just like, no, we're just going to do it?
Yeah, I think it is a hard decision, I guess, like when you want to start having kids. And we decided, okay, I think we're ready. Like we've got the capacity.
Yeah.
And I was like, for my career, I had to take a lot of exams to get to a certain certification. And we waited till we were almost done with those exams so that
Okay.
I actually had more capacity.
Wow. So y'all were married after freshman year of college,
Mm-hmm.
and was your preparing for your career in line with your undergraduate years, or that was even longer?
It was after.
After.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for my career, you have to take years and years of exams.
Okay.
That each exam takes between 300 and 500 hours of studying. So I really wanted to get through a bulk of that before we had kids. So that helped our decision to wait a little bit. And then once I got to a good place in that and we felt comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many years after you all had been married did you have your first?
Let's see. He was born 5 years after we were married.
5 years. Okay. Very cool. Yeah, that's similar to us. I know when Lydia and I were having conversations about having kids, it was when we first got married, it was we'll pick up the conversation seriously in terms of trying to actually think about detail stuff whenever college debt is paid off, because we're not going to try to figure out how to pay off debt and figure out job stuff and having a kid and all that. Just felt like not the smartest decision. So I'm not, if you've made that decision, not bashing it at all. I'm just saying for us, the decision was let's try to focus on one thing at a time, which is kind of how my brain works. I'm a one-track mind kind of guy.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and it's hard too, like, because even when we decided, like, hey, now's the time we want to have kids, like, it took us a really long time to get pregnant. So you just can never tell that, and it's like, and when we finally did, get pregnant, we were like, oh wow, this is so much better timing than if we had actually had a child a year ago when we started trying.
Yes.
So it was good that that God is in control of that, and we don't actually get to pick that.
100%. Yes. No. And of course, we've got our own journey where we ended up adopting, which totally changes the timeline, completely unknown about what's going on, and the Lord's hand is definitely at work in that. And so we've been super happy and blessed with that. And it's encouraging to hear from y'all, to hear your story. I think we've been in a group together for some time. I've never even heard some of this stuff, so it's super encouraging to hear where y'all have been in your journey thus far. I want to talk a little bit, I want you to talk a little bit about, you are on your fourth now. I don't know if you plan to have any more. We don't have to have that conversation here. But I'd love to hear, what have you noticed are the biggest differences between your 4 kids? I'm like 3 months into my first one, so I've got one sample.
Yes.
So maybe talk a little bit about the different experience you've had over the years of having different babies.
Yeah, they're very different, for sure. Our first was the most difficult. Okay. Probably because we had no idea what we were doing. Neither one of us had experience with babies.
Okay.
Before we had him, I had changed one diaper ever.
Wow.
My husband had never had any experience with babies either. So it was an adventure, and we were some of the first among our friends to have kids. So that was also a challenge, I'd say. And he was also just a more difficult baby. Like, he just had a hard time eating, and he cried all of the time. If you sat down with him, he screamed. You had to be up moving around with him. So it was a little exhausting. But also, I don't think we were the best at, like, entertaining him and understanding, like, oh, how do we make a baby happy? So definitely learned for the others. The second and third were a lot easier. I don't know if it was because we just got lucky or if we knew more what we were doing. I don't know. But they were girls, and they were very calm. And we were like, oh, okay. After the first, we were like, why on earth do people have babies? Like, this is very hard. But then the girls were so much easier babies. They were very chill and just enjoyed life and sat back, and it was wonderful. And then our fourth, he definitely is a little bit more challenging than the girls were. He is not as easily satisfied. He definitely cries a lot more. But it's also so nice to have the older kids there to help. It's just the best watching them interact with him, and they play peekaboo, and if he needs something, they're always running to get it. So I'm afraid he's going to get a little, lazy. But it's just fun to watch them.
Younger sibling syndrome, all the classic stuff. That's super cool here. I feel like Lydia and I have been spoiled a bit with Leo because he is more in the zone of what I'm hearing you talk about with your 2 daughters. And it's like, now as we're thinking, we know we want to have more, we want to adopt more kids, but it's like, it feels like rolling the die on being difficult. And I've learned that I don't have the patience that I thought that I maybe would have for a little infant. Maybe talk... Before coming off this topic here, you were saying with your oldest, your firstborn, was the most difficult, especially in relationship to crying. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time here, but maybe talk about because I found this to be probably one of the most difficult things about having a kid, at least having a young infant. What makes it difficult for you? What were the things that were, I mean, obviously it's a noise, but if you could try to talk about and describe some of the feelings that bubble up from you, I think you get what I'm trying to get
Yeah,
at here.
yeah, definitely. I think when you have a baby, it makes you realize like how selfish you are.
Sure.
So I think like, it was like you could never sit down. You could never do the one thing that you wanted to do. Like, I just want to go clean the bathroom or, knock out this laundry. It's like, nope, you can't do that. You have to like sit and try to like take care of this baby. I think that was one of the hardest things, is just being able to recognize like, okay, my to-do list or desires are just like have to go away because I'm just like tasked with taking care of this baby who can't do anything for himself.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably one of the hardest things. And then also like it's hard to interact with your spouse when you have a screaming child. It's hard to have any good conversations, and then you're tired and exhausted because you're not sleeping well and that kind of thing. So you have to also just have a lot of grace for each other because you're not your best self and you're more likely to snap at your spouse, and it's hard.
Yeah. What were some of the things, and maybe y'all are still practicing them now with your youngest, what were some kind of skills that y'all developed to help work inside the middle of that? Because you don't have no choice. Like, you're stuck with having to work inside of those difficulties. So what were some of the things you talked about, like a mind shift you had to make? Maybe you could talk some more about that, some other things that were going on that helped y'all kind of fit into a slot that was at least functional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think making sure we communicate well, and like when one of us is exhausted, saying like, "Hey, can you please take a turn taking the baby," or whatever. Especially as we had older kids, I think that was really important. Is like, "Hey, I'm just gonna go to put the baby in the stroller and walk him around the neighborhood for a while, so you can like hang out with the other kids and get things done, or give them some attention." Because that was also hard. Is that the babies do steal attention away from the older kids, and you don't want them to feel neglected. So I think taking turns, figuring out what worked so that one of us could get a mental break. Like, I enjoy walking around the neighborhood, so that worked out fine, to do that. Or saying, hey, do you want to take the older kids, in the car and just go to the park or just drive around or whatever it is. So I think just communicating well about how we can each help each other out was big.
Yeah, absolutely. And that mental shift, I feel like I'm still in the middle of that mental shift, because there's a part of me that still wants to hold on to what I've had in terms of rhythms of life before. And some of the freedoms that you were talking about. Of course, you mentioned cleaning a bathroom. That's on the list. Of course, that's on the list. But all the other things that you just normally you're not inhibited by, and all of a sudden you are. And for us, I mean, teamwork has definitely been crucial to being able to function. Us being able to figure out how to work together. We're still in the middle of trying to figure out exactly how it works best. But that's encouraging to hear, and I'm also going to slotting away some tips and tricks that you're giving for when we have more than one.
Well, and I feel like once you get have a few more, is like you don't even remember those rhythms you had before you had kids, so you don't remember what time to yourself was.
You
like
gotta forget about those. You gotta have amnesia.
Yes,
forget
exactly.
about life before. Just slot into this, right?
And you figure out what works. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So on the topic of difficulty. I would love to hear from you in the specific infancy stage. What are some of the biggest fears that you've wrestled with over the years?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think you've got like the big fears from your baby is going to get hurt, or something terribly devastating is going to happen to them, or they're going to choke on food, or am I feeding? But then there's the small things like, am I feeding my baby the right thing? Do I take them to the doctor for this small fever? There's just so many things you could worry about.
Yeah.
And I found it like I had to keep reminding myself, and my husband and I have to keep reminding ourselves like, okay, we are not in control. And so we cannot worry about all of these things. these are God's babies that He has entrusted us to take care of, and ultimately He is in control and He's good and we can trust Him. And so they're not things that we should be worrying about. We just need to do our best to take care of them and love them and make the best decisions that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Were there any things that were like markers that you could look back on that was the shifting point for you, or was it just gradual over time learning how to see it that way that you just described?
I think it was definitely gradual over time. Especially like with the first, like I felt like we were in survival mode for so long. It took us a really long time to transition out of that and be like, oh, okay, like I think we're living normal life now. And then it was just easier with the other ones. Like once I saw like, okay, like we've raised this baby this far, like, we can do this with another one.
Absolutely.
So that was helpful.
Yeah. I wanted to ask that question because I would venture to guess everyone that is having children has deep fears that they have to wrestle with. And I don't want anyone to feel like they can't talk about them.
Oh, absolutely.
About them. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to be willing to say that here, and talk about the things that are difficult about having infants. It's difficult. Difficult would be a killer word that I would use to talk
An
about.
understatement.
Anyways, I know that, and you already talked some about your work and stuff. You put a lot of time and energy into getting the job that you do have. And I know that you still have your full-time job, and somehow you have still been a mom to 4 children. So maybe if you want to talk a little bit about what led you to that decision to make it, and then if you would talk a little bit about what has the experience been like for you to be what is a full-time mom? There's no such thing as part-time parent. You're a full-time parent, and to be a full-time employee.
Yeah, I think it's a hard decision to make. I really enjoy my job, and so I wanted to keep working, but also, especially after I had my first, it was like, oh, do I really want to go back to work? It's a really, really hard decision. But I think a couple of things that helped me as I was thinking through it, and I was very appreciative of a lot of people who gave like very wise counsel. It's just like 2 foundational things to remember. Like 1, our value doesn't come from our work. And so our value comes from the finished work of Jesus and our right relationship with God. And so I don't have to look to whatever it is that I do for work for my value, and that just frees me up to enjoy whatever it is that God has placed before me.
Yes.
And so that was a very freeing thought that I had to remind myself of.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was that all moms work. Like you said, if you are staying home full time, or you're home and you're volunteering, or you're getting paid for your work, whatever it is, like everybody is working very hard. And so we just get to be faithful, I think, with whatever God has placed before us. And for our family, it made sense financially for me to keep working. And I had a great job, and I really enjoyed it. And I have really good work-life balance. So that's a huge thing. If I was spending hours and hours at the office and not getting to see my children, that would be a whole different story.
Sure.
But I have an amazing job that I love, and I enjoy going and interacting with my coworkers and being a blessing to them. And so I think it's a good decision for us, but every family is different.
Yeah.
And it's great that my husband is supportive of that and that it works out well for our family.
Yeah, absolutely. Lydia just a couple weeks ago decided to step away from work and not go back to the job that she was at. And I can remember us having decisions. And basically what I had posed to her was, financially, we can live. So you have the freedom to make the decision. The hope was to try to do some of what you were saying in terms of your thought process, your mind of saying, my value isn't coming from my work. And so then I'm just evaluating the different factors at play and just trying to make the best decision that I can make for our family.
Exactly.
And so different people are going to come to different conclusions about that. So that's super cool to hear. Hard transition here, but a topic that probably is like one of the topics when it comes to infants, which is sleep. Mm-hmm. It's come up a couple times already in the conversation when we haven't chased the rabbit trail yet. I don't know if I necessarily want to talk a whole bunch about like different strategies to help with sleep? Because I know that it's a big conversation and there might be disagreeing opinions and things like that. But I'd love to hear what has been y'all's experience with sleep in the early years, early months. What does that look like across the 4 different children? And maybe if there have been some things that have been helpful to you, I would love to hear that as well.
Yeah. So it helps, I think, that my husband is naturally a night person and I am naturally a morning person.
I'm sure that would help, yes.
So in the very early weeks of all of our children, he would stay up late with them and then just come and get me whenever the baby needed to eat. And so that was nice that I didn't have to listen out for the baby or worry about, like, he would take the baby to the far other side of the house so I couldn't even, like, hear him crying. And that worked out really well. And then I could get up, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I would have the rest of the night, and that would be fine. But then, like, as they got older, it didn't make sense for me for both of us to stay up. And since I was the one feeding him, like, I didn't mind. I got to a point where I had a good rhythm. I could get up, I could feed him, change him, and get him back to bed. And so that worked out for us. I think it's different if you're breastfeeding or bottle feeding. There's all sorts of different considerations, but that just was what worked well for us. I think what changed it one time was we learned that I do better getting up in the middle of the night and dealing with an unhappy child. There was a situation where my husband got up and, the baby was not cooperating or, and there was just some unpleasant sounds coming from the room. And I was like, you know what?
I have no idea what you're talking about, Shari.
And so I was like, you know what? Maybe this is a situation where you should just sleep. And then you're fully refreshed for the day when he's not, sleeping and he wants to cry then. But maybe I can handle some more of the nighttime. So, it's just different personalities, I think.
Definitely different personalities. We have that you literally were speaking. You could have been talking for us in our experience. What average hour in the first month and then the first couple of months were y'all getting?
The number of hours of sleep per day?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. In the first month, I don't know, maybe 5 hours a night,
Okay.
6 hours maybe.
And that's broken up.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You get 1 to 2 hours at a time.
Yeah.
Which is not the same as getting 6 straight hours of sleep.
It's not. No.
And I've never been a napper either, so I hate taking naps. And so the only time I've ever napped is the first few weeks of our children's lives, and after that I was like, nope, can't do that. I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah, the sleep is tough. Going into having children, sleep for me, I'm a 8-9 hours a night guy.
Yeah.
That's just, it's who I am. The sleep is good. So that was tough for us. And we had what was a fairly similar system, except he was bottle fed. And so we got to kind of tweak with that idea some to try to give each other a little bit longer stretches at night. But even that, we also, one of the things we learned, you just got to be flexible with it, and you got to be willing to make adjustments, which isn't the most natural to me because I'm like, we'll pick a thing, we'll stick to the thing, we'll do the thing. This is the thing, we're doing it.
Well, the baby's changed, you got to change.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, the sleep is super difficult. When was it and I'm assuming it would be different times for the different children that you've had, was the marker that was like, he or she is this old and it finally feels like I can do this amount of sleep. We could do this the rest of our lives and be fine.
Yeah. Well, I'd say you get to a point where you feel like you've at least sort of caught up to be a normal human, maybe after a month. Okay. But then it's not until maybe 2 months where it's okay, I'm getting up only once or twice a night or whatever. This is fine,
Sure.
And with my first ones, that's when I went back to work too. So it's okay, this has to be okay because this is reality. And I think your body just adjusts to because even when the new baby would start sleeping more through the night, my other children still wake me up in the middle of the night. Somebody gets up.
Don't tell me that. Then I have that to look forward to.
They get bloody noses. They have a bad dream. They're sleepwalking and can't find the bathroom. There's so many different reasons that I get woken up on any given night. So your body adjusts. I think I'm much better now at getting up, dealing with a problem, and going back to sleep.
How many nights a week do you get uninterrupted sleep?
Oh,
You just give an average, and you just give a guess if you've never thought about that question.
I mean, probably like, I'd say now I'm to the point where maybe 5 nights in a week. I probably get uninterrupted sleep. That
So
might,
majority by the time now.
yes, I would
And
say
you've got
so.
you got a widespread of kids. I mean, you talk
Yeah.
about 10 to 1. That's a lot. It's a lot of different years in there. I'm
Yeah.
assuming there's a lot of different developmental stages that affect the way that they're sleeping.
Oh, yes, for sure. And I would say, like, you have to think about uninterrupted sleep, too, from, like, a limited number of hours. Like, okay, I'm not going to count as interrupted sleep if it was before 11 o'clock, because theoretically, like, maybe my children haven't gone to sleep yet.
Sure.
Or, like, they get up really early. Like, this morning, you know, one of my children pounded on my door at 6 a.m. And I thought, oh, gosh, it's an emergency. What do you need? And they came in, Mommy, you have to look out the window. It's sun rising. It's so pretty. And it's like, okay, how can you be mad at that, you know?
I'm glad that you have the grace and the patience to be able to say, how can you be mad at that? Because I can see myself in the future being the kind of parent that would be like,
You have to shift your mind, though. It's like, okay,
yes.
I can't be mad at them.
I'm working on it. Yes, we'll get there eventually. Maybe we've talked a lot about some of the difficult things because it is difficult. But also want to talk some about the joys. You were just talking about that mind shift, that readiness to engage in that relationship with him. What have been specifically in the infancy stage? What have been some of the biggest joys that you have found?
I think watching all of their little development milestones is so cool. Like the first time they smile at you, you know, it's just like so rewarding. Because up until then, you're like doing all this work, and it's like they won't even smile at me. Why don't they like me? So I think like that's the biggest one. Like, I think that's when they smile, and then when they laugh, that's just so great. And I think especially with my 4th child, watching the other kids interact with him and making him laugh, they can make him laugh more than my husband and I can. Like, he just giggles so much when he sees them, and it's so cool. And then, like, you know, when they crawl, when they walk, it's just so amazing to see, like, how they develop and, like, watch them become little tiny humans.
Yeah, that's super cool. The smiling and the, like, it's specifically the responsiveness, the back and forth that I have found extremely joyful and encouraging, and wasn't ready for it. You know, I was ready for just, this is grind, we're just doing the work and whatever, and it was like there's something that it feels empowering whenever you're sitting there with your child and they're looking up at you, and you know that they're seeing you in part. I don't know all the details of exactly what they're seeing or whatever, but I know that they recognize me in some kind of capacity, and they're responding to it with playfulness and with happiness, and that's a feeling that's powerful that I have found, and and I'm looking forward to all the ones that you're talking about that are we're not there yet, but I'm looking forward to them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I look forward to those times in the day now, and because you're going to face all the difficult stuff, and it's like, if I get that time of little playfulness, and we're talking 3 months old, so short little windows where you get it, but it's so wonderful, and so enjoyable.
And you just get more and more of those moments as they get older. You get the other extreme also, but you get more.
Just tell me that part. I don't want to about that. Maybe talk a little bit, make a little bit of another hard shift here. You and David are working at this together to raise these 2 kids. How have you, especially in the infancy stage, worked to try to figure out weight of responsibility between the both of you so that you feel like you are working together as a team? And I'm assuming that's developed over time.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're much better at it now than we were. Like, you figure out what works for you, but also, like, it's just a huge, like I said earlier, communication. Like, you have to be talking to each other and be like, hey, I'm exhausted right now, or hey, I had a rough day at work today, or whatever it is. But I feel like, you know, we share the responsibility, and we talk to each other and figure out, you know, what works for us. And I think making sure that each of us has time not to ourselves necessarily, but time to be able to sit and pray and sit and read our Bibles, because it's very hard, like, when you have a child who depends on you all of the time to sit and have that times. And we've figured out, like, listening to the Bible in the shower, or when you're walking down the road or driving in the car, and making sure and just encouraging each other to make sure that we've got that time, because if we're not looking to Jesus for our satisfaction, like, we're going to be miserable trying to take care of our children.
Yes, absolutely. And I know I want to talk specifically to the dads out there who have wives who have decided to stay at home, because y'all are in a little bit different of a place where it's like both of you have maintained work at different capacities, and then I don't know how y'all do, and then figure out how to do it. Just y'all are way high capacity people. But for the people out there the dads out there specifically, who mom is staying home to watch the kids, one of the things that I have worked, and I've heard it from other people, so it's not like I've originated this idea, I've just tried to institute it, which is I went and worked a day, and days can be frustrating, tiring, exhausting, whatever. It can be all the normal stuff that we all face with work. It's just reality of work. And I've had to shift from whenever we didn't have Leo. You could come home and you could be like, look, I'm exhausted. Can we just, normal responsibility stuff, can we just forget about it for tonight? It's not a thing.
Can't do that.
And the big difference is that the way I've tried to think about it is my wife has, and you mentioned this idea earlier, which is she's worked all day too. And the specific thing she's been working at is still right there. Mm-hmm. And so I can in my head be like, well, I went and had an exhausting day, so I'm going to come home. And my home is my place where I just kind of shirk responsibility and throw it off. It's like, no, I've got to come home and I've got to work to figure out, and I'm still working to figure it out, which is how can I step in and be helpful? How can I carry load here? And so I just want to say to the dads out there who have wives that are staying home with babies, if you aren't already thinking that kind of way, I would encourage you to do so, to think about how can you come home and be a person who carries weight, not a person that adds weight, because that's the thing. We're still in the middle of figuring out how to do it, but that's just you're developing the teamwork that you have between the two of you in a whole new level that we haven't faced before, because we haven't had kids before.
Yeah, I think and that's a great point. Like, whenever one of us is gone doing something and then comes home, it's like the one who is home tries to make sure that the children, like, give that person space, because sometimes you just need a little space when you get home to, like, recover your thoughts, change, do whatever you need to do.
Sure.
But then also, like, the person who's coming home always is asking, hey, what do you need me to do right now? Because you never know what you're jumping into. Like, where can I best help you? And so that's worked really well for, like, both of us to try to remember what the other person is stepping into as we transition. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, last kind of idea I want to hit on, and it plays into this idea of teamwork, because obviously there's you and David, and you're the ones that decide to have kids, and they're your responsibility, and you can raise them. But you all also exist inside of a community of people, that you aren't alone in this. And so first, I'd love to hear, how have y'all learned to lean into that community over the years, especially in this newborn stage? Because I'm sure that leaning into the help when the newborn stage is different than when they're 10 or whatever. But maybe talk some about the way you've leaned into your community group, your friends, your family, whatever it might be, that are the people you're connected to in this stage of life where it's a helpless little baby.
Yes. Well, we've definitely always appreciated our community groups, through church. It's so refreshing to have a space where we can go and talk with other people, moms, or just other people, to remind us of the gospel. And as I said earlier, like, babies make you realize how sinful you are. And so it's nice to have that space to go and to be able to freely confess and repent and have people remind you of what's true in the gospel and that you are forgiven. So I think that's been really helpful. And then we also are very fortunate that we have family members who are helpful. In the last year, my parents actually moved into our neighborhood, which is the most amazing blessing, that they can come over and help with the baby, especially. Wow. Yeah. Or if, like, I text them and say, hey, we cannot get him to stop screaming, they'll say, we'll come over and we'll take him for a walk. Like, that's such a blessing. Wow. It's a huge help. So we're very fortunate to have that. I know that not everybody does have that, but it's really nice to be able to reach out when we need help. And you have to admit that you need help sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm be willing to accept that, but it's nice to have those people around us.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. And I know that we have definitely leaned into help. I mean, it started even before we had Leo because of the adoption journey that we were on. We were leaning into help. I mean, everyone knows that was around. We were asking for financial support and prayers and all that kind of stuff beforehand. And it set a tone that helped us think about we aren't alone in this. Yes, it's our child, and we're taking primary responsibility, but we aren't alone, and we have help, and we've been helped so much, and it's been so fantastic. So there's such a freedom that comes from being able to know other people are there that will step in and help, and it's been super helpful. So it's encouraging to hear that y'all have had that as well throughout the many years of kids that you've had. Most things have positives and negatives, though. So lots of positives that come around from other people being there to help out, lend a hand, things like that. One of the negatives that comes out of it is maybe what you call unsolicited advice from people, and I will operate under the understanding that the people who are giving advice are coming from a good place. So we'll just make that assumption that they genuinely are trying to be helpful. They're not trying to be hurtful. How have you learned to navigate as a parent? You can talk about specific, in the specific moment of somebody giving unhelpful advice, trying to be helpful, but genuinely being unhelpful. And then maybe also talk about how the inner workings of you. We talked about fears a while back ago, and I feel like when voices are constantly saying other things than what you're used to operating in, it can feed that. So maybe talk about that end as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that you definitely get a lot of unsolicited advice. And a lot of times from your closest friends, they just have lots of opinions about the things that you're doing. And like you said, usually they're coming from a good place and they just want to help. So I think a couple of things is I have found myself sometimes reacting in pride and be like, no, I know what's best for my baby. What are you telling me? And I've had to remind myself that I need to be humble and that while I'm trying to do my best, I may not always know what's best. And so sometimes I need to listen to what other people are saying. But then also I have the freedom to say, okay, well, that's a really interesting viewpoint. And I don't have to listen to everything that everybody says.
Sure.
I think I got a lot of opinions about feeding our first child. And like the different ways that you could do that. And it's a stressful decision. And I ultimately had to ignore the advice of a lot of people and just do what we thought was best. And work through that with my husband. And I think it also helps to stay off the internet. So, you get enough unsolicited advice from people.
Can you say that to my wife in the camera?
You get enough unsolicited advice already, just in day-to-day. I don't need to go and find a lot of other people's opinions. Now, I definitely Google things of oh, my baby's got this weird rash. What should I do?
Sure.
Or there's a lot of things I look up. Or my baby is not crawling and he's almost a year. Is this a concern? There's things like that. But I don't need to be on social media comparing myself to other people. That's not going to help me in any way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Was that something that you struggled with early on, was comparison game? And if so, what were the things that helped? You talked specifically about I tried to seriously limit the way in which I was engaging on the internet so that I couldn't just always be bombarded by other people doing stuff. But in everyday life, you're coming across other moms and dads that are doing the same stuff, maybe differently, and might be forcing some kind of wait, are we doing it right or whatever? How have you wrestled through some of those thoughts and feelings?
Yeah. I could think of some specific examples. I mean, like I said, we were some of the first of our friends to have kids. So we didn't have a lot of people to compare against,
Sure,
honestly,
yeah.
with our first one. So then with later ones, it was comparing back to the first one, like, oh, this kid is not picking this up as quickly as our first. Is there something wrong? Are we doing something wrong?
Yeah.
But with our first, we had children around the same time as several of our pastors, and their kids were a little bit older. And my goodness, they picked things up very quickly. One of them was a very early walker, and one of them had such a wide vocabulary at such a young age. Like, it was before they were even a year old. They started talking and all these things, and I was like, oh my goodness, are we doing something wrong? Do we not talk to our child enough? Should we be doing something different? And that's when you have to remind yourself of, like, okay, every baby is different, and I am doing the best that I can to make the decisions that I can, and you have to shut those thoughts off. I think it's an intentional thing of, like, this is not a healthy path that my brain is going down, and I need to revert back to just loving and taking care of my child the way that I'm called to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I haven't faced it a whole lot yet, at least for me. Can't speak for Lydia. I'm sure it will be more as he grows older, and has more. There are more and more ways in which it can be easy to compare to other people, other families, other ways of doing things like that. So it's encouraging to hear from you having to just make that shift. I'm raising an individual. And yes, human beings have patterns, but this is a person. And just like with an adult, I treat that person as their own person, trying to get into that mindset of, this is a unique individual made in the image of God that I get to figure out how to love them wherever they're at. So, yeah, it's encouraging to hear.
And that's even more obvious as they get older and you see their developing personalities. But then again, it is hard not to compare them to each other and to other people. So definitely a lifelong adventure.
Yeah. Well, do you have any closing thoughts, any words of encouragement? Is there something that I didn't talk about because I'm a new dad?
I think we covered a good variety of topics. I think the best thing I'd encourage people to do is to focus your thoughts on Christ. The more that you're pursuing him and finding your value in what he's done for you, the more you'll be better equipped to raise children, because you'll be raising them out of a place of the overflow of your heart, like you're loving them, and not looking to them for joy and satisfaction and achievement.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very encouraging, and also in part convicting, because it exposes weakness in us. That's not the natural way in which we operate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard.
And so, hopefully we all can continue to, as families inside of Mill City Church, learn to continue to grow in that way of seeking Christ in all the different areas of our life, especially in the ways in which we're raising our kids. Well, thank you very much for coming in and having this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Really enjoyed getting to talk with you about the infancy stage of little babies.
So exciting.
Thanks for joining me today in this conversation about parenting. I hope it was helpful to you and that it sparks good conversation for your own family. I know that each family is unique, and you're going to have your own questions about whatever you're facing with your kids. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to other families in our church or your pastors about any help that you might need as a parent.